Welcome everyone to the latest episode of A Shot at Business Central and a Beer, where we bring you the best of both worlds, Business Central and beer. Ken and I are your hosts, and today we have a very special guest joining us, Søren Friis Alexandersen. I hope I said that correctly. If not, Søren can correct me. Søren is a seasoned expert in the field of Business Central, has years of experience working with various other Microsoft software, has become a champion for women in dynamics, and is also a very gifted musician. And while he's a master at technology, he's also a fan of beer, from what we can gather. So, everyone, grab a cold one. Join us as we dive into the world of Business Central with Søren. It's sure to be a fun and informative conversation. So let's get ready to sit back, relax, and hopefully you all enjoy this podcast episode. Welcome to the podcast, Søren. How are you?
Thank you very much, Michael. Again, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Pleasure. It's our pleasure. Thank you for joining us. We truly appreciate it. So before we dive into about things about who you are, what you do, and all those good things, how about we start off the show by talking about the beer that you chose for us to drink? It is what? How do you say? Trappist Roquefort, I guess. I have no idea how to pronounce it.
I actually have no idea how to pronounce it as well. So it's Belgian. So that does require a specific turning of the tongue to to be able to sort of pronounce that. But yeah, Trappist Roquefort. I don't know, but yeah, this one has been a personal favorite of mine for some years now. I've been traveling sometimes to Belgium with some friends over the last 5-10 years. I think I was first introduced to this style of beer, like the heavier style, maybe 10 years ago, where I actually didn't like it at all. Like it was just too heavy. But then I was sort of introduced by another friend, to start with, a certain one, and then it grew on me, and then another one, and then suddenly the next thing I know, I could just drink it all, and now I can just, Some would probably prefer this kind of beer for the heavier foods, like Christmas kind of fatty foods.
Comfort.
Some can just drink it like it is, and like I guess it depends on your preferences.
Yeah, it's funny. When I was talking with Ken yesterday, I did not realize that it is 11.3% alcohol. That shocked me.
And you have a long day ahead of you, so you can.
Yeah. So, Michael, I love your priorities and starting with the beer.
Thank you.
Well done there. And yeah, we're this is like I did looking this up. This is like the champagne of beer here. They call it the special, is its nickname. This is the heaviest or highest alcohol of the Trappist Roqueforts, or however we're saying that. But yeah, the reviews are positive. World Beer Champions in 2004, 2006. And just like every positive adjective you could think of in beer reviews for this.
All right.
Yeah, an intricate yet unapologetic bouquet of flavors and smells.
Wow.
I have not tried it or smelled it yet.
Another one says, this is by far one of the world's most amazing beers. It aims to make Guinness look and feel like a dark tea.
All right. Yeah, I think what sort of stuck with me was the whole licorice-ish kind of notes you get from it, and also, I mean, what the Belgians have sort of figured out is a way to make sweet, like the whole full and sweet flavor, and with often very high alcohol, but without it tasting like. I mean, you don't taste that there's 11% in this one, right? Like, where sometimes in some other styles of beers you can easily taste if it's 6% or even 5, 6, 7%.
Yeah,
but they just found that magic formula to make it like refreshing and heavy at the same time. And
yeah, it is. And I hate, for all the beer nerds listening out there, well, let's go down kind of the what is this? So it's a Trappist style beer. This one's called a quadruple. It's kind of a term. They came out with quad. They refer to it. And some of the uniquenesses of these Trappist beers is that the first one is this uses 50% more malt than a typical beer. So I think that gives it some of its strong character. It also, the Belgian beers, like these Trappist beers, they use 100% fermentable sugar in addition to the malt bill, which is usually Belgian candy sugar. And I think that goes to your point where they said it kind of tastes sweet still, has that sweet and alcohol. And then it says you cannot brew a Belgian style beer without Belgian yeast. And this is the most important part because of the flavors that it produces. Maybe that's that licorice kind of aroma.
I definitely get a licorice note to it.
Yeah.
Søren, do you like black licorice? I'm assuming.
Yeah, and I think growing up in Denmark, like I don't know where licorice sort of originated, but whenever I speak to foreign people, it seems like they know that there's connection between Denmark and licorice. So I'm assuming we're not far from the source. but yeah, I mean, and I don't know anyone like in my proximity that don't like licorice. Now that I think of it, it's just been one of those things, it's
licorice is very popular, especially in the United States too. But I found that I think red licorice is universally loved in the United States. Now, black licorice, depending on who you're talking to, that's where some people don't like it. You either love it or you hate it. No, and nobody really says, "Oh, it's just okay."
Right.
Do you have like a sweet licorice as well that's also black? In Denmark, we would refer to it as Finnish, like being from Finland, like Finnish licorice.
No, I don't think so.
Not that I know of.
Well, if we meet in real life, we should exchange some licorice.
That comes from the Finnish licorice mines out in the mining fields. There, they mine for licorice out there, I guess, huh?
Right along with beer.
Yeah.
All right. So, all right. Now that we got the beer covered, which was probably one of the more important segments, I'd say.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
Søren, we were looking over your past work experiences and everything, and we noticed that you kind of started on the path of technology through being in IT. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about your journey and how you kind of came to where you're at in Microsoft.
Yeah, true. So I started with like my first job in IT was back like our full-time job was back in '98. And I was being hired into an IT department with a company of 500 people, 500 employees doing manufacturing, and we were a handful of people in that IT department, and we were in the process of starting up a new migration project from our ERP at the time was the Danish Concorde XAL. I don't know if it was kind of a predecessor to AX. And we were migrating that heavily customized solution to a Dynamics or AX at the time, like Axapta, the old version. And that project took 98 planning, go live, I think, in 2003. Like it was just huge.
Wow.
Thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of customizations. And to one of your previous points in one of your episodes was we took the let's keep all our customizations approach to that project, and it was just huge because it was a different application language to develop, and we developed everything mostly in house. So there was just a lot of stuff, and I was so fortunate to have a boss that said, even though you're a junior everything, like my first job in IT right out of school, I could do I was allowed to do anything. So I set up an Exchange mail server. I set up some firewalls. I set up a storage area network with fiber optics. And 50% of my time was devoted to everything else, and 50% was sort of ERP development. So I had to learn both the Concorde XAL language and then also learn a few years later the AX language, like the C++. No, it's not that. No, it's the X++ language. And then after that, I'm staying with this role just for a bit because I was there for 7 years, and I learned much of what I know today based on that. And I think one of the most important skills that I sort of acquired then was being inquisitive in nature. Like, someone from the warehouse would come up to us in IT and say, "Hey, could you build us a screen where we could do X, Y, Z?" And we would go with that person back to the warehouse, say, "Oh, tell me more about this, and tell me why that's important, and tell me why you can't just put the pallet on the other sideways, or scan it here," or like that kind of conversation would take place, like consultant would do. So learning to be a consultant back already from the beginning of my career, I think that was just super valuable. Learning to ask the questions before we even touch the code, touch the code anyway. Because maybe there was a way to solve the issue without touching the code, and that would be ideal for everyone, right?
Yeah.
So I think that was sort of the key trait that I learned at that point. And then after being there in 7 years, that being my first job in IT, I sort of, through the visits from external consultants that we had, I began to sort of, look a bit outside the window and say, "Hey, I wonder what else is out there in terms of career opportunities." And then I found a local firm in the city I lived in, where they were looking for someone with Concorde XAL knowledge, like the previous system I worked on. And then they also had this system called the Navision, and I had no clue, other than I knew it was sort of a competitor, and it was this was in 2005, so it was a couple of years after the Microsoft acquisition, and obviously I've heard about the product somehow, and especially there was a confusing period of time there when the product, like the AX product I worked with, was actually called Navision Accepta. So it kind of had both names in it. I think just for a year or so, like the naming back then was just a bit confusing.
All over the place.
Yeah. So there so that was my first time consultant job, or consultant developer job, because I guess for many of us in the nav industry back then had the luxury of being able to be, like 50% developer, 50% consultant, because it was fairly easy. Like the ramp up to do some development wasn't very hard, right? So you could do at least some lightweight development, but over time I became more like 70% developer or 30% consultant. I had that job for about a year, transitioned to another partner, where I did some actually strange decision. Now that I look back, I decided to leave nav and go back to AX, and with a integration company that did a lot of BizTalk back in the day. So doing C# work in Visual Studio, building DLLs that could transform data from A to B in BizTalk, where one side would typically be AX and the other side would be whatever system you would have, like EDI. I didn't have that job very long. Maybe I missed nav, I don't know. But I eventually I found a partner that had a big nav solution. So that they're called Trimit. It's a big solution in Denmark for the furniture manufacturing, fashion industry as well, with all the things that comes with having variants of size and color and all that kind of stuff. That was an extra dimension, like a real extra dimension to everything I knew. So that was super exciting, doing some product development work there, and also work for specific customers. Then was sort of full-time nav, so no other stuff, and I decided to sort of leave AX behind, which was interesting because there was things that I missed in nav that AX could do, like the object-oriented nature of AX. I was missing in nav. On the other side, nav was easy because it reminded me of Concorde XAL, like the previous system. So there's some similarities there in the procedural thinking of how you structure your code and so on.
Yeah, I haven't. I started in NAV or Navision in 2001, and no, I didn't ever work with Exapta or AX back then. But I came from another company where we did Unix-based applications, and the first time I started using the development object designer development environment, I was like, what? Like it was unbelievable as a consultant. I'm not a developer to go in and be able to do the things that I was able to do on site in front of the customer and immediately show results. I fell in love. So
you totally get it, and that was the value, right? You could so easily go in and modify a report or something like that and provide that value for the customers, you say. Yeah. And then so that's so the final stage before I then ended up at Microsoft was I was at that partner, like the Trimit partner, I think also about a year, so it wasn't long. Was it 14 months? Then I thought to myself, well, wouldn't it be fun to try to go solo and start my own company? And I thought I could do a bit of AX, do a bit of nav, and whatever would come along. I got wiser. I mean, it was at a time where so much happened. So it was 2008. Just when the financial crisis hit, and but it was also around the time where Microsoft would come out with the role-tailored client, like 2009.
Yeah.
So much stuff was happening that I needed to learn. So I had to sort of say, oh, you know what? You can't do nav and AX projects. You have to choose, because so much stuff I needed to learn and spend my time on. So I chose nav, and I'm happy. Now I'm happy I did that. And I was right. There was so much to learn, and also, and even after just choosing like technology, I also had to figure out, do I want to be a developer or do I want to be a consultant? Like, because I could sort of choose, like I say choose now, like I had the luxury of choosing. I still struggled with finding customers, of course, like anyone else, like going solo for the first time. But I had to sort of choose what blew my hair back. Like what would I, be happy when I got up in the morning? What would I want to do? And it's funny because I thrived mostly as a developer, like diving in, doing integration work was my primary thing, like integrating A to B, whatever it might be. And back then there was a lot of Navision application server going on, like reading files, saving files, moving files, little, text files all over the place, that kind of thing. I can see Ken nodding here as well.
Old school integrations.
Before my
yeah. Like I just remember this old trick of, like, if you had a file that was being written, like you had two application servers trying to do something on the same file, like the one who would read it should try to move the file first into another folder and then open it so it wouldn't be written into by the other one. Like that small tricks you would learn in the old school way.
Which are all like completely irrelevant now, right? Because technology has changed so much that like all those things that you had to consider.
Absolutely. And I owe a big gratitude to an old mentor like Michael Nielsen, not the for nav Michael Nielsen, but another one that told me learned me all about database commits and structuring your code right and making sure you weren't left with unfinished transactions and all that kind of stuff that I don't personally look at it anymore. But then, so I was self-employed with integration work for 7 years almost, I think. And then for personal reasons, my life took me to Copenhagen, where my now wife lived. And I thought, well, I could probably run my business from Copenhagen instead of the town where I came from. I had one employee at the time, actually. I just hired an employee a year before. Of course, like any other solo, startup kind of, company, it's hard to find, like, how would I find work for that one? I think my productivity personally fell probably 80% just trying to find work for him, keeping him busy before myself, right? So trying to teach him nav. He was kind of new
Yeah.
to the business and so on.
Yeah.
So that was hard. And when I chose to move, which obviously didn't work, we lost that kind of daily connection and it didn't work out. So I had to let him go. Coincidentally, and it had also been, through some personal rough times at that point. So I moved to my wife, to my now wife, in September. Let my employee go, I think in October, or was it November? And then out of the blue, I had dinner with a friend. He said, "You know what? Have you thought about being hired into a company again? Dropping your solo career?" And I said, "Well, no, I don't. I hadn't really thought of that, but yeah, I don't know why, because Microsoft was obviously like being in the hometown of NAL was sort of like maybe just couldn't see it. It was just.
I was going to say, were
face.
you aware when you moved to Copenhagen that Microsoft had an office there? Or
Yeah, and I knew some of the people. I mean, just by reputation and seeing them at conferences and so on. So I knew they were there. I knew they had their headquarters in Denmark, also, like from a NAV perspective. But for some reason, I was so focused on running my business that I didn't see it as an option. But then, after having dinner with my friend, I got home and said, let me just check out Microsoft. And I found their website and saw they had a role at the time. It was in the sales organization, so not in the engineering organization. They were looking for a account technology strategist. So basically, you're being hooked onto a number of enterprise customers as a technology advisor, having to know about all that Microsoft had to offer, like anything, like across Azure and Office and on a sort of level 100, 200 thing. Having to go advocate that for customers, say, hey, what do you want to do with your business? Based on that, you should look into these technologies and you can stitch them together roughly like this, like not being an architect, but like business value wise. I was in that job for 18 months, leaving ERP behind, thinking I would never go back. Then, suddenly I found a job. There was an opening in the NAV engineering team, which was on the same floor as where I was, like physically in the same floor. So I saw some of the people, I recognized them, and one day I just thought, what the hell? Let me just write a person. I saw there was an opening. I didn't get that job, but I got another one because then rumor had it, and got in contact with my now boss, Yannick, and he said, what, I'd love to hire you. Let me check what we can do. And I had, when I started Microsoft, I'd sold my business, and actually my employee that I had to let go a month before was also hired into this new business that that took over my activities. So everything sort of worked out also for him. So that
nice.
Yeah, that was actually nice. So, and then I was at Microsoft, and then in the NAV team, early Madeira days. Madeira, right? It was just around that time, and I didn't know what I was supposed to do. Like, I was hired into the team, and then I was assigned a topic that has been kind of a how should I put it? Like, it's kind of a hard topic to land. The topic of regulatory features, like you have the 1099 reporting, you have the all that kind of stuff for all the countries that we localize for. That was my first job, was to try to get that bit more under a process, like defining a process for how do we work with those kind of features. How do we, how can we make sure we get information from authorities upfront, all of that kind of stuff. So that was super exciting in itself. High risk features in the sense that they have to work, and so that was fun. And so I did that for some years, and then 3 actually now, I think, we decided to focus a bit more again on what we call onboarding, like customer onboarding, which we can talk about for a long time. So that's super exciting in itself. And about a year ago, so I had both the topics, like both regulatory features and onboarding, for a period of time. But obviously, since regulatory features could sometimes just blow up in the sense that some new regulation would come along in a country, you had to drop everything you had in your hands and just go work on a feature because, in 4 months, this
Right.
new law would take effect and you have to build something for customers. It wasn't sustainable to have both like a strategically important topic like onboarding and then also have the regulatory features. So we hired a new guy, new oldie but goodie in the community, Alexander Todorovic, to do the regularization features. So that's really good. He's doing a great job on that. So I could focus on the onboarding stuff.
Great.
Before we jump into the onboarding, I just got a quick question. When you started working with Project Madeira, could you imagine that it would turn into like the powerhouse that it is now, Business Central? I mean, was that always the goal, or?
I think the goal, yes. I think you can ask anyone, say yes. Did we want, like, could we see a future where we had a true SaaS product that you could spin up online and it will run as any other Microsoft service? Yes. Could we have foreseen, like what's now 6 years ago ish, like which bumps to go over and around, and it's just been an incredible journey.
Amazing journey.
It's been super exciting, and I've not personally worked on all the platform stuff that the team has done to make it become something that was nav to run as a world like hyperscale cloud service. But I mean, it's just amazing what has been done, like transforming the airplane while it's flying, basically. that's what it is. It's just such a daunting engineering task. Of course, there's also consequences of carrying a legacy system with us in that sense. Like, sometimes some people ask, what you could have also just started from scratch with your knowledge about ERP. You could have built something from scratch in a like born in the cloud way, like you had Power BI. On the other hand, but there's I think the most important reason, the single biggest reason why we didn't do that is we had the partner community. Like, imagine having to reskill, retrain a huge, and just we can't even put into words how valuable. Like we live from the partner community. Like we just can't do without it. Like you're our sales, our implementation muscle, and everything, right? So it's just. So I think it was the right decision. Not that that's for me to have an opinion.
And a couple 100,000 businesses running it that would look for a path forward, right?
Absolutely.
To that new future.
Absolutely. Okay. But I think it could have been tempting to ask yourself that question at the time: should we build something new, right, in the cloud that's more suitable? But I think because it maybe would have been easier, and like some other things we have faced, we maybe wouldn't have faced, or maybe we would. We don't know, right? So there was, I can't remember the author of the book, but there was a person writing in the book say you can't design for scale. You will run into something as you scale that you couldn't have foreseen. So like, it's a kind of like in theory you could build something that could scale like forever, but in practice there just always will be something, right? And in that sense, it made a lot more sense to carry nav with us, but as you say, like for customers and also for partners.
Yeah, Business Central. We became a partner in 1999, and since then, NAV and Business Central is all we do. Right, our whole organization is pretty much centered around it. And for years, it's funny you say developing new product. For years we had to fight against our competitors against this thing called Project Green.
Oh yeah,
which was the new ERP that Microsoft was developing that everyone was going to have to move to, to create beer and prospects. And as far as I heard, I mean, there was really nothing ever to that. But maybe there was. It doesn't matter now.
It doesn't matter. No, it doesn't matter. No, but it's one of those ghosts like that kind of lives forever, in the sense that like we hear the same sometimes from the field. We hear the same things now, where it's all about positioning of products. Like us now, we have two products that do very much the same, and the difference between them has been blurred over the years, like between finance and BC. But you have like, and when would you choose one over the other? And that's always a risk if you have two products that are very similar in what they essentially do. So and there's confusion and also thought around that as well, both in the community, even internally Microsoft, and sometimes so that, but
yeah, we've competed against AX and F&O over the years and won. You're right. It is tricky for people to differentiate between the two.
But I think that hopefully we've become better at telling the story about when should you choose what. Like, I think back when I started, I think our messaging was still, oh, if you're below 250 users or employees, then you go for BC. If you're above, you go for F&O, which obviously doesn't make sense to anyone else than maybe Microsoft in some sales motion kind of way, because, and that's what we've sort of redefined later is, you know what, for you to choose the right product, there's of course a product fit for your business, like out of the box, what does it do? But then there's a solution fit. Like if you are in the food industry, which solution is there? An ISV out there? Is there a good partner fit and with knowledge that can back? It's not about having the IP. There's also the consultant, like the knowledge within that industry that can back it. And with all these, if all these stars align, then you know which solution, because the solution itself, as long as you, of course, you can identify with Microsoft, like the strategic direction you want to choose a Microsoft product. That's sort of one decision in itself. But there's all which product to then go with is a lot more about what I just said. Finding the right partner and solution fit, I think.
Right. Yep. Cool. All right. So now you're spending time doing onboarding. So when, I guess, let me start with this. So when we talk about onboarding, are you referring to the moment that someone says, I want to look for a new ERP solution or financial accounting or manufacturing system? Is that where that starts? Or is it once you get to the decision that I want to investigate Business Central?
That's a great question, Ken. So when we started doing some, like here in recent times, let's say within the last 2-3 years, we pulled up onboarding as a topic, as an investment area again, recognizing, by the way, that back in the Madeira days, it didn't work out. You couldn't have a 5 minutes to sign up or 5 seconds to wow, or it's the other way around. Like you just couldn't do that with the product back then. Like the product wasn't right for that, and the times weren't right for that. So we're thinking about that now again and say, there are some customers who can and will onboard by themselves, and I'll just come back to that just to answer your question. So it started very much with being focused on getting the customer live to a productive state. So once they have acquired the license, what does it take for them to go live? But it expanded quickly because we figured out, how do we even attract customers in the first place? What's our marketing message? What do people see on the Microsoft website? How can we help our partners get customers onboarded quickly? And I think what we've realized is, to be honest, and I heard the previous episodes where you went through my LinkedIn post where I said, what if you could onboard on your own? What if you could automate all this? Which obviously when I write it like that, it sounds like this goes for everyone. But obviously, I want to really emphasize that when we talk about onboarding, we very much recognize that on the far extreme, let's say you have a come in right from the street, swipe your credit card kind of person, like, very small company. They will say, hey, I'm a carpenter. I'm just like the guy next door. Surely you have a template for someone like me. I can just teach myself to use the system and set it up, and let's default as much data as possible. I can use whatever chart of accounts you want to give me. Where we actually know from evidence, like these customers exist, like self-service on the rise. On the other extreme, you have, of course, from the companies we've been talking about, where many customizations. You can't. There's no way this complex business can get up and running without having a partner with domain knowledge and what have you beside them. And then there's everything in between. Now, our onboarding focus tried to attack the former, first and foremost. So, but we also want to say, whatever we build for onboarding, like the checklist system and the welcome banner, let's build it in a way where also the bit more complex customers that have a partner by their side can make use of that. But we don't see, and that's also if you check the checklist, for example, like if you start a trial from Microsoft website and you see the standard checklist in my company, like the new blank company, it's an example checklist. Like it's not intended to make you go from 0 to live without a partner, like, because there's no way you can do that. Unless, of course, you have a very savvy, business IT oriented person in your company that really understands how to go and find documentation and do stuff. But we wanted to focus on, let's give partners some tools so that those partners who can template stuff from their own website, maybe, and configuration packages, and have 9 out of 10 customers for this partner would be the same type. They would have the same setup of data. Let's give them some tools to get ramped up and deliver more customers, because ultimately what we want to tackle with onboarding is try to solve for or take the pressure off the need for resources in the channel. That's basically why we want to do it. We want the customer to become a subscribing customer today rather than in a month from now, because in a cloud economy, that month is lost. You can never get it back. And the same goes for our partners. So whatever we can do to help partners serve more customers, and provokingly, I've been talking about in a way where, what if you could empty the heads of your consultants and put it into some IP, into some apps that, your assisted setups or your checklist could ask some questions that a consultant would normally ask. Say, hey, do you want to use, and maybe you don't want to ask, hey, do we want to use costing method FIFO or LIFO, because that's too complex for any, let's say, digital assistant right now, unless we bring in ChatGPT and what have you. But maybe it's fair to ask, hey, do you do any projects? If not, let's leave out that part of the chart of accounts, because let's not, create those accounts in your chart of accounts. Because so there are some things I think can be digitalized in a sort of digital consultant kind of way, and then there are things that just cannot, because it's just too complex. But only partners will know. And I realized when I see my LinkedIn post, I could have made it sound like, this can go for every type of customer, but obviously not. I mean, but I think the key point is that I do think there's an opportunity for partners to maybe rethink how they deliver their value digitally versus in person, and say in person, like in quotes, like over a Teams call or whatever, but like the billable hour, and maybe figure out if that bar could be set differently, so the billable hour is spent on things where the consultant is absolutely indisposable. Like you just have to have a consultant with that domain knowledge about the food industry or whatever. That's the kind of thinking we'd like to spawn with partners. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's challenging to us. We view it like as a challenge. If you go back, right, I think that, and I don't know if this is something we made up at Solution Systems or if this was the official thing, but back when it was, Navision, it was the slogan was tailored for the way you do business, right? And that mindset that it's designed to be molded to fit what you do because you're unique and you have these unique things, and that's how we've kind of operated. I joke with people internally. I say, oh, our Solution Systems, our motto is we never do the same thing twice. Because every customer that we engage with has this unique set of personalities and size and business processes and expectations of who we are as a Microsoft partner, what services we deliver to them. So there's all these variables that, and now it's like, how can we take our best practices, because those do exist, that the way that we do things and how we approach a project and an implementation and how we set up certain fields in Business Central, how can we take that and craft it into an automation, and I think this onboarding tool sounds like it's that avenue for us to begin to do that, right? When we're setting up and deploying it. I think in your office, in the office hours, Michael, we talked, mentioned a link where we can kind of pre-install some apps and walk through some assisted setup tools to deploy some data sets within there.
I think the office hours really cleared up a lot of the questions that I had. Like Søren said, I was under the impression that the automation was supposed to be for every single prospect that's going to turn into a customer. But after watching the office hours, I know that's not true. I know that Microsoft has done the research and the self-serve customers on the rise. So I think the automation is really great for the self-serve customer, and I think it can be a really good tool to help bring down some of the consulting hours for larger corporations. Personally, I don't think it's going to ever be able to fully automate a customized onboarding for a really large customer. But what I did like, and what Ken was alluding to, was that, it looked like we can start a trial on our website, if we use Power Apps, Visual Studio Code, whatever it may be, and then have that person onboarded, or they start a trial, and then we can pre-install some apps, it looks like, that we built, and then for the trial, that person can actually use the trial with our preloaded apps. Is that correct, Søren?
Yes, it is. Exactly. And what's key there, I think, is because now your app is installed, you don't have a formal relationship with the customer yet, like through CSP and what have you, but your app is installed, which means that you're able to, and because you also profile the prospect on your website, you have the contact information. So we're able also to provide some contact, like some touch points inside, like through the checklist or whatever. Like you measure on, I wonder if they completed checklist task number 3. And if they haven't done that for 4 days, maybe that's your cue to go contact the customer and say, hey, we can see you're stuck at, bullet 3, importing data or whatever that is. Like, can we help you? Because then you provide laser focused value for that specific customer. So the multiple reasons why this is important is, like, you can increase your funnel. You can qualify your funnel better because by asking them whatever questions on your website and reacting to that inside BC, showing them relevant content to what they have chosen on your website, like coming back to the food industry example or whatever. Like you can speak the language and nurture them in a better way. So hopefully their first meeting with the product would not be the standard Microsoft trial, but be your flavored trial, so to speak. Yeah. Which is our, like, that's our nemesis, right? We, like, if you look at Business Central, as we just talked about, we try to be everything or a lot for the maybe not single, but 5-10 user company and the 500 user company. Like, how can we speak the language of whatever prospect comes through the door, not even knowing if that prospect is, by the way, the CFO or someone else in the company? Like, what do we show them? What terminology do we use? Do we know if that person is interested in seeing? I want to see how sales forecasting looks in BC. I want to see how, how do production orders. Like, that's a very different thing.
It's a daunting task.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and the scope, and like you said, the scope of Business Central is crazy, right? I mean, it's core financials, warehouse management, manufacturing, job, service management. I mean, right? How do you, to know what someone's going to be interested in? We get requests for prospects to say, oh, can you set us up with a free trial? And we will, but we will do everything we can. We would rather spend, if we have to, an extra hour or two on a Teams meeting walking them through some stuff, because it's just, we know that it gets frustrating because they've never been trained, right? They don't understand how certain fields work, and it looks like I can't even do this. Well, no, it's over here. It's called something. It's called something a little bit different here. So it leads to frustration, but I think through this onboarding, some of these tools that exist, it looks like we can have more control over what that trial environment looks like. Some of the data that's in there even, and some of the apps, so that it's a much more complete tool and reflects what they might see once they kind of actually get in there.
Even what Role Center's coming soon, that pops up when they log in.
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And speaking about that hour that you would rather spend, which I totally get. I mean, that's you want to make sure that feature that's important does not go unnoticed, and because they came from QuickBooks, they're looking for feature X or whatever. Like, I'm just in QuickBooks, that maybe not your segment, but in theory, it's that kind of thinking. So what we're hoping is now that we can give partners the control to spin up customer-centric trials in a way that speaks to that individual prospect based on what they have said it is important to them. With a bit more, so you can free up your time for the bit more daunting, challenging prospects and also customers.
Yeah. So I think it's a. Go ahead, Michael. You have a question?
I was going to say, I'm a marketing guy, so I have to ask this question. When the prospect were to come on our site and answer our questions, for their personalized trial or whatnot, we're obviously going to get their information. But is Microsoft also going to get this information and then use it in their marketing touch points, so to speak?
No, we actually made a decision because, there's a nuance, but let me just explain something first. So we need to make sure that if someone has started a trial off of your website and being profiled and said, hey, I'm interested in seeing this and this, and you spin up a trial, you own that trial. Like, you own it in terms of what do I show to the customer. In the standard trial today, we have some notifications popping up. I think after, I can't remember, day 3 or something like that. Hey, are you looking to get in contact with some partners or something like that? We need to make sure that we don't confuse anyone by saying, hey, you just selected a trial from a partner website. It's actually a Microsoft trial still, but it has a partner IP on it. We can't confuse you by throwing a message on day 3 saying, hey, do we want to find a partner? Like that kind of thing. And we may still have some tweaking to do there, to be honest, to make sure that it's either or.
It doesn't happen.
Yeah. That being said, we do get telemetry on how many prospects start a Microsoft trial with from the sign-up context that is yours, for example. we do get that information to see also, are there partners out there who have succeeded in creating great trial experiences where they convert customers who would perform great in that sense. And the reason I say that is also that this capability we're talking about now, which we call the sign-up context, preloading your app for a trial, can obviously also be used for any other app source app, but it's not intended to be used for any other add a field app. Like, it's not a test drive. That's not the intention, but it could be used as such. The intention is to use it to provide a trial and onboarding experience to convert a prospect to a paying Business Central customer. That's the intention, but we'll have to monitor and see how is it being used.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, that clears it up for me.
Yeah,
Good.
no, and this is exciting. And before we get into we have a couple other things we want to touch on here with you before we let you go. But before we get any further, I just want to make sure that I'm able to say, as a Business Central partner, this is what we live and breathe every day. We do appreciate you, like you and your team and the Microsoft's efforts in executing in Business Central over the last several years. I mean, our growth is going crazy, and you can just tell there's so much buzz with our customers when they see Business Central and new prospects. So Microsoft and Business Central, thank goodness for us, has done just fabulous job executing over the last several years. So
we're so happy to hear that. Yeah, thank you, Ken. We're so happy to hear that because we also feel, and of course see from all numbers, that things are just going great, and just to be able to debunk all the myths and all the uncertainty back from the Madeira days, like would this even fly, and would there be a future for, like, what does Microsoft think about Business Central as a strategic product? And all we can say is just it's just full steam ahead, and every metric, every metric that we can see just confirms this. And also thanks to you and the entire partner community. This just shows that we're doing things right. And of course, you could always argue with a specific decision or specific feature, delaying it, or when would it come. But we do hope that what we release is being valued. And actually, I think, and that's some of the conversations that we're having. I think you had those with Mike Morton when he was on your show some time ago. Is maybe there's even an opposite challenge, which is we release things so often that how can we make sure that customers are not disturbed by feature, overwhelmed by new stuff? Because we know from partners, the feedback we get, hey, Microsoft, you release stuff so often that how can we keep up? And we can see that also from my chair, from the onboarding capabilities and features, like it just takes time for them to sort of take hold in the partner community, like being uptaken, and it just takes time. It takes multiple releases to actually see that uptake. It just goes to show that you have your customers to serve, our customers to serve, and you don't always have time to get into the nitty-gritty details of what we release and new capabilities. It just takes time. So thank you for all the hard work.
I think that's a good problem to have, right? Too many features, too quick of a time. It's a good problem to have.
And some of those people might have been the same people that were complaining that Microsoft didn't release new features often enough.
Right.
So
yeah, it's a luxury problem. But I think to Mike's point he made back in the show is we'd love to get to a point where we could release whenever we want and leave it up to the customer to plan for when a good way to test out this feature and then release it when they're ready to do so. And we have the whole feature management area that I think we've only sort of scratched the surface, but I think we definitely want to do more in that realm.
Yeah. Well, you guys are doing a great job. And speaking of doing a good job, I think it's time we talk about women in dynamics. maybe you can tell us a little bit about what it is. I believe you sit on the board of it, if I'm correct. If not, correct me. But what is it exactly? And maybe can regular people get involved? How does it work?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, thank you, Michael. So that's a super important topic that's very close to my heart. I think most of us have known and learned through our, like, when I look at you and me, we've been in this game for a very long time, and for many years, there's been a overrepresentation of men in our field of work. That goes in IT, of course, and in most tech jobs, and that's not because uh, there are no women that can do the job, and but there is a problem with not enough women choosing this line of work. So there's a very, let's say, how do I put it, second, third degree, long tail decisions going into, how many females are there. So, for example, if we go to the people who recruit from Microsoft, and we would say, hey, we would like more women, they would say to us, yeah, well, that's fine, you want more women, but like, few women apply, a few women, put themselves out there. So it starts like there's a very long chain of, like, it starts in the
Right.
families, it starts in education, it starts many places. But that being said, we think there's a lot of bias still determining how people get hired, and so there is something that, like, we want to address this. And so Women in Dynamics was formed under the Directions EMEA umbrella, you could say. Not last year, but I think it was in 2021, as a, let's say, group or community trying to promote, let's have more women in dynamics, like both in leadership teams, but also just as employees. And so let's attract more women. Let's tell the good stories of, hey, what great career you can have in tech, and especially in dynamics. And we had some sessions on the directions, and yeah, a few months ago, I was fortunate to be able to join the board. Obviously, being a middle-aged white guy, you could ask, hey, what's a person like that doing in the board of women in dynamics? But it just goes to show that, we like, this is an important topic that needs all the advocates it can get. I represent another, let's say, minority, in the sense I have some. I'm on a maybe a bit more different angle on the diversity, neurodiversity scale than most. I have PTSD. So in that sense, I also represent a minority and knows what it feels like. I'm not saying I need special needs in my daily life, but I could sort of identify with the women in the sense that, as a minority, sometimes you need sort of a forum to sort of speak up and carry forward your thinking.
Gotcha.
So yeah, so that was formed, and actually, what's happening now is that we started as being sort of a subgroup of directions, but as of these days, like as we speak, we're forming our own company, as a charity or not for profit, and primarily because we like to exercise our influence is, like, in as many places as we can, and being part of directions was, I wouldn't say limiting, but obviously there was a limit to how, because there was also, question of funds and what have you. So we'd like to be able to participate in every conference that we can get in contact with, and spread the word, and have some sessions and talk to leadership teams to, what does it mean, what can you do in your company to attract more women, to hire more women, and that kind of thing. How can we speak to the individual to apply for job in tech, and specifically dynamics. So let's see where it goes.
Yeah.
Like right now, it's sort of full steam ahead, and already we have a great number of strategic partners and sponsors. Because obviously, breaking out of the directions umbrella, we'd have to find our own money to do stuff, and that makes sense. And as you know, traveling and participating in conferences is not free. So
Absolutely.
a lot of stuff going on there, but super exciting, and it's just a super passionate team in the Women Dynamics board. And to your point, Michael, can anyone get involved? Yes. And what I mean by that is, like, you can, like, whenever we share something out of Women in Dynamics, or advocating, or learning about how can you in your own company, just where you work, promote women in dynamics. And now we're just talking women, like we could talk any minority, but specifically women. Just want to say, now people who listen to this can't see this, but I'm holding up a book now that's called Women in Tech, a book for guys, which I highly recommend. Which is really good, because it's sort of like, what it does is sort of depicts a number of stereotypes in terms of males. And I definitely found mine, like all the way from the top in the sense that, all about advocacy, all about promoting women everywhere, actively speaking up and all that kind of thing, all the way down to the, to the person that actively fights against it, and everything in between.
Gotcha.
And what it does is it sort of recognizes that you're probably not doing it on purpose. Like, you're probably not fighting it because you truly don't want more women in dynamics or in tech. There's some bias going on, or maybe the way you're brought up, or the way the culture is in your business. What it does is it helps you take the next step to climb up that ladder. Say, hey, if you're a person X, how can you become one who does a little better? And it doesn't expect you to jump from bottom of the ladder to top of the ladder. It helps you. How can you get better at speaking up in your company? How can you get better at promoting your colleague who's a woman? Or like there's a lot of great practical tips in this book. So that's
great.
We'll put a link to it in the show notes for sure.
Yeah, we discussed the Women in Dynamics at our staff meeting a week or two ago, and we're over 40% women here. So you may be getting some new members soon.
That's great, and that means you're actually above the average. So that's really good to hear.
Good, well, that's good to know. Yeah, no, it's some of our. I mean, it's it's a meritocracy, so to speak, here. And some of our biggest superstars, right? It's
absolutely
across the board. So yeah, and I just wanted to kind of touch on a little bit here. We couldn't let you go without referencing your musical talents.
Yeah.
And we went out and saw some videos online of you and your band, and I don't know if you
really
have
good.
any.
You guys play really well together.
Oh yeah. Do you tour? Have you toured at all?
We haven't toured, actually. When as you probably know, we played at the Directions EMEA conferences in Hamburg. We actually, like, one of the guys said afterwards, what, we should have done a tour T-shirt with just one entry on it, Hamburg. that would have been fun. We haven't toured.
No, but no, you're very, very talented. But serious kind of question. Music, as a kind of musician myself, just play the piano. Not in a band or anything like that. But I was just curious, what do you feel is what role does music play in your life as a you look at as a software technical expert, but then there's music and what role does that play for you?
Yeah, that's a super good question, Ken, and it's always played a huge part in my life. I started when I was 13 playing the drums, and I switched to the guitar about, I think, a year after. I'm self-taught. I haven't had any like unfortunately, other than like back in the day, there wasn't like YouTube didn't exist back in the day, right? So
Right.
I had to learn
Right.
learn from my school comrades and what have you. But I think the best way I could describe it is like people need a way. We all need a way to sort of de-stress and sort of get away from work and playing guitar is I imagine when you play the piano is like takes so much of my like attention that I cannot allow my brain to be anywhere else. If I do, I'll just suck. Like it just falls apart. But if I manage to then push away everything else, which sort of happens automatically once I immerse myself in playing, then it has this kind of meditative effect. Like it just cleanses like your just that your brain just get cleansed with like
Yeah.
fresh input and
Rejuvenates
that,
you. Yeah.
yeah. So it has that kind of effect on you, and I think like to the core of my existence, I would like it. This is just a hypothetical thing, a stupid thing, but if I was to choose tomorrow between my career and playing the guitar, I'll choose the guitar any day. Like that's kind of important. It's kind of, I had a few years where I didn't play. I've had a number of occasions, like 2-3 years where I didn't play much, not even at home during my life. And in those times, what I found out when I picked the guitar up again was, wow, how could I live without this for so long? Like it just completes me in a way that you would normally think of like a family member or a spouse could do. Like it's just without it,
Yeah.
I feel like I would just lose an arm, like that kind of feeling.
It's your
Like,
passion. Yeah. It's your love. It's one of
yeah.
your true loves. Yeah.
Yeah.
It
It's
is.
amazingly similar like vibe. Like it's like balance adds some balance. It's almost, and I joke, it's almost like I can feel a part of my brain engaging that otherwise isn't getting a chance throughout the rest of the day. Or
Absolutely. And I'm sure if someone would monitor your brain, they could see a spike in activity in certain regions that wouldn't be activated in any other way.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's right. And yeah. So we were just lucky to get the chance to play directions. It was just a fun coincidence. I did some home videos of playing guitar at home and uploaded them to my Twitter account, and then I'm connected to many BC people in my Twitter, and someone would say, "Oh, it would be cool if you would play at the Directions conference in Hamburg or something like that." And then James, as you know, he wrote someday and said, "Hey, you know what? Could this be done? Should we explore this?" And I would say, "Yeah, hell yeah, we're up for it." And let me just ask the guys, and we'll figure something out. And yeah, it turned out, and it was just for me personally, it was of course a special evening because being there in front of my colleagues and the partners I know and performing with my band was just one of those magical evenings that I remember afterwards, totally high on everything. I went down and talked to people and just high fives and all that. There was a guy, I don't know who he was, but he said, he just stopped me and said, "You know what? I looked at you on stage and I thought, there's a guy, going here to present from Microsoft, and then he's playing with his friends on stage, like enjoying himself. He's just living the life." And I said, I can't deny that. I can't deny it. That was just a perfect
Kind of
experience.
good then. That's great. Well, I won't bore anybody with my 5th grade recorder playing days. Funny. But all right. Well, I think that might bring us to the end. Ken, anything left to ask or talk about?
No, just thank you for joining us. We certainly appreciated hearing all of your insights, background, and experience, and what you're doing today at Microsoft to make Business Central, a great product.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Bye, guys.
All right. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you so much. Thank you, guys.
Bye, everybody.
As we end today's podcast, we want to give a big thank you to everyone who listens, shares this podcast, and leaves us reviews. You've taken a good amount of your time out of your day, and we truly appreciate it. Thanks again. And don't be afraid to email us at marketing@solsyst.com with your tips for the podcast, or maybe you'd even like to be a guest during an episode.